West African Pidgin English, also known as Guinea Coast Creole English. Well, my friend, you got trade today? You got plenty of slaves? No, we no got trade yet. By and by trade come. You can't go. What you go for catch people, you go for make war? Yes, my brother, gone for catch people, or they gone for make war. Sierra Leone Creole, them go eat rice. Ghanaian Pidgin English, them go shop rice. Nigerian Pidgin English, them they go shop rice. Cameroonian Pidgin English, they go for go shop rice. Gula, then Dangwin Fayam rice. Sranantongo, then Ingonyan Alesi. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Safara Moses and I welcome you to Ink and Tales. Today we're exploring the origins of West African Pidgin English. West African Pidgin English, also known as Guinea Coast Creole English, is a West African Pidgin language lexified by English and local African languages. It originated as a language of commerce between British and African slave traders during the period of the transatlantic slave trade. As of 2017, about 75 million people in Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, and Equatorial Guinea used the language. Because it is primarily a spoken language, there is no standardized written form, and many local varieties exist. These include Sierra Leone Creole, Nigerian Pidgin, Ghanaian Pidgin English, Cameroonian Pidgin English, Liberian Kolowa English, the Aku dialect of Creole, and Pidginglish. Historical accounts. West African Pidgin English arose during the period of the transatlantic slave trade as a language of commerce between British and African slave traders. Portuguese merchants were the first Europeans to trade in West Africa, beginning in the 15th century, and West African Pidgin English contains numerous words of Portuguese origin, such as sabi, to know, a derivation of the Portuguese saba. Later, as British merchants arrived to engage in the slave trade, they developed this language in combination with local African slave traders in order to facilitate their commercial exchanges. The language quickly spread up the river systems into the West African interior because of its value as a trade language among Africans of different tribes. Later, in the language history, this useful trading language was adopted as a native language by new communities of Africans and mixed-race people living in coastal slave trading bases such as James Island, Burns Island, Emina Castle, and Cape Coast Castle. At that point, it became a Creole language. Some scholars call this language West African Pidgin English to emphasize its role as a lingua franca Pidgin English for trading. Others call it Guinea Coast Creole English to emphasize its role as a Creole native language spoken in and around the coastal slave castles and slave trading centers by people permanently based there. The existence of this influential language during the slave trade era is attested by the many descriptions of it recorded by early European travelers and slave traders. They called it the Coast English or the Coast Jargon. A British slave trader in Sierra Leone, John Matthews, mentioned Pidgin English in a letter he later published in a book titled a voyage to the river Sierra Leone on the coast of Africa. Matthew refers to West African Pidgin English as a jargon, and he warns Europeans coming to Africa that they will fail to understand the Africans unless they recognize that there are significant differences between English and the coastal Pidgin. Those who visit Africa in a cursory manner are very liable to be mistaken in the meaning of the natives from want of knowledge in their language or in the jargon of such of them as reside upon the sea coast and speak a little English. Matthew supplied an example of West African Pidgin English as followed. Well, my friend, you got trade today? You got plenty of slaves? No, we no got trade yet. By and by trade come. You can't go. What you go for catch people? You go for make war? Yes, my brother, gone for catch people, or they gone for make war. Modern Africa. West African Pidgin English remained in use in West Africa after the abolition of the slave trade by Western nations and the decolonization of Africa. Many distinct regional variants of the language emerged and looked down upon during the colonial era as a bastardization of proper English, a stigma still attached to it by some today. Pidgin nonetheless remains in widespread. In 2016, there were an estimated 5 million individuals who use Pidgin as a primary language for everyday use in Nigeria. As of 2017, about 75 million people in Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, and Equatorial Guinea speak the language. During the rise of African nationalism, it became a language of resistance and anti-colonialism, and political activists still use it to criticize their post-colonial political leaders. A standardized written form of Pidgin. Over the last 100 years, the amount of English lexifier-based creoles in West African countries currently being used as primary and secondary language has increased greatly, with speakers currently exceeding 100 million. Because West African Pidgin English is a primarily spoken language, there is no standardized written form, and many local varieties exist. In August 2017, the BBC launched a Pidgin news service aimed at audiences in West and Central Africa as part of its World Service branch. And as part of that effort, the BBC developed a guide for a standardized written form of Pidgin. Historical impact. The various Pidgin and Creole languages still spoken in West Africa today. The Aku language in the Gambia, Sierra Leone Creole, Nigerian Pidgin English, Ghanaian Pidgin English, Cameroonian Pidgin English, and Fernando Po Creole English, all are derived from the early West African Pidgin English. These contemporary English-based Pidgin and Creole languages are so similar that they are increasingly grouped together under the same name, West African Pidgin English. Although the term originally designated only the original trade language spoken on the West African coast 200 years ago. Some scholars argue that African slaves took West African Pidgin English to the New World, where it helped give rise to the English-based creoles that developed there, including the Gula language in coastal South Carolina and Georgia, Bahamian dialect, Jamaican Creole, Belizean Creole, Guyanese Creole, and Sranan Tongo. Since enslaved Africans taken to the Americas spoke many different West African languages, they would have found West African Pidgin English as useful as the lingua franca on the plantation as they had found it back home in West Africa as a trading language. Their enslaved children born in the Americas would have adapted different versions of West African Pidgin English as their native languages, thus creating a series of new word-based English creoles. Closeness of appearance. The similarities among the many English-based Pidgin and Creole languages spoken today on both sides of the Atlantic are due, at least in part, to their common derivation from the early West African Pidgin English. Note the following examples, all of which mean they are going there to eat rice. Sierra Leone Creole, them go eat rice. Ghanaian Pidgin English, them go shop rice. Nigerian Pidgin English, them they go shop rice. Cameroonian Pidgin English, they go for go shop rice. Gula, them dangwen fayam rice. Sranan Tongo, den Ngonya Alesi. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye.